I'm with Claire Wood. Claire, this is your first marathon, the New York City Marathon. What are you more excited about, this or coming on the Drop podcast?
Oh man, that's a hard one. I'll say equally in different ways, but right now this.
All right, so are you excited? Do you have a goal today or are you just having fun?
I have a goal, and I'm not going to share it out loud, and I know I'll have fun.
But I'll hear about it on the podcast, right?
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Claire.
All right, Meg, we have a guest today that, it's kind of strange because she's not necessarily in the running industry now, but she's probably one of the deepest agents in the whole industry that we know. And it was recommended when we were interviewing Paul Lang. He's like, you got to get this person on.
So maybe we should say her name. We are chatting with Claire Wood today. Claire is I'm basing this off of your LinkedIn, so if I mess this up, that's their fault.
No problem.
The Vice President of Global Footwear at SOREL.
Correct. Yeah. I actually realized like 3 months ago, I had no current job on LinkedIn. Because my role kind of changed a bit a year ago, and I ended that one and never put the new one up. But I guess I'm fine. So that is my job. Yes.
So Claire Wood sounds like somebody that would be in that movie Clueless. Doesn't that name sound?
Oh no, I thought you were gonna say like Elwood.
Maybe that's what it is that I'm thinking. Okay.
There was a show during COVID. I think Hollywood it was called. It was like, it flew under the radar, but there was an actress there was a character named Claire Wood.
Oh.
Yeah.
See, it just works.
Yeah, it is a nice name. So congrats on that. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
So easy to remember. Like some people come on, I'm like, oh, please don't make me say their name. I'm going to mess it up. I'm going to butcher it. But Claire Wood, that's a pretty good one.
So before we started recording, I started asking you how you were feeling because as of last Sunday, you are officially a marathoner.
That's right. I ran my very first marathon. I turned 43 next month. So I ran my very first marathon in my 40s. And I never thought I could stay healthy to run a marathon, and then a whole host of other reasons. And I did it. And so I get it. I'm hooked. I already want to run it. I already was like, should I just go run another one in 2 weeks? Because I ran it stupid. I didn't achieve the time that I wanted to achieve, but I also know that I had no idea what I was going to learn until I got out there.
I think New York is the worst one to learn on though, because my fastest at the time when I ran New York, the very first time I ran it, I ran my fastest half marathon I'd ever run. It was going to be the best day ever. I was so excited. Mile 16 came, my legs locked up. It was the worst. Yeah. So it's a tough one.
It's tough. And I had so many different inputs. Like Laura Green loved the Queensboro Bridge. I had another friend that was like, it was a nightmare for me. I had different people saying, you know what, this pace is going to feel so easy because of what you've done, which, I mean, I didn't use a Garmin for 15 years. I got on Strava after I had my daughter 2 years ago. I was like, you know what, I'm going to join this world at a depth that I've just avoided for a host of reasons. So then I had people being like, oh, I'm looking at your long runs. You can do this. This is going to feel like a walk in the park. My watch was like losing signal. I mean, it's like you learn that you're no different than anybody else. Like I think, oh, I'm too smart to go out too fast. I'm not going to go out too hard, and then you get caught up in it, and then you think, oh no, I feel good. And then I'm just basically holding on for dear life the last 6 miles. But I was like, you know what? It could be way worse. You could be dealing with other things you're not dealing with. It could be worse. So the New Balance crowd was like, oh, we didn't see you. And I'm like, I saw you guys. I wasn't going to say that.
Would you equate it to learning how to drink in college?
I'd say like way harder. Way harder.
Yeah. Speaking of college, you ran in college, right?
I did. Yeah. I was a very mediocre Division I runner. But yes, I ran at James Madison University over 20 years ago on the East Coast. Yeah.
Okay, so when did running actually like enter your life? Were you always a runner, like as a child? We were always athletes. Like my sisters and I have two sisters, one an identical twin. And we were super competitive in high school sports, like to the point of
tears at the dinner table, freshman
Yeah.
year. So my mom encouraged us to do different things in the winter, and we'd grown up swimming. And we have another sister that was running indoor track, and my mom was like, "Why doesn't one of you run indoor track with Audrey?" So I ran indoor track, but I really ran track to stay in shape for field hockey. We were year-round field hockey players. But then I ended up working in a local running store at my first summer job at age 15, which is sort of another story how that started. You can look back in life and realize like tough things actually completely set your path. This isn't something I talk a lot about, but my sisters and my best friends in my neighborhood were all lifeguards. It was like the cool thing to do. You were a lifeguard at one of two of the big public pools. And since I was 7, I've had an autoimmune skin condition called vitiligo. And my parents were like, "You're not going to lifeguard. You don't need to be out in the sun, even more than you're out in the sun." So I remember just like hysterics, right? You're devastated.
Yeah.
I want to be a lifeguard with everybody else. And my mom was like, "Why don't you work in the running store where we get Audrey's shoes?" Which was a store back in the day called Footsteps of Reston. It turned into a
Wait,
Pacers
Reston,
Running,
Virginia?
I think. Yeah, Reston, Virginia.
Okay, so you're in this area. You were a swimmer?
Oh, yeah.
You've got, we'll have to talk about this later, but my step nephew was a swimmer from Maryland and he's around your age and everything. So
so
you probably crossed paths.
I worked at Footsteps of Reston with Alan Webb, who was a great swimmer turned amazing runner.
Yeah.
But that little running store also like completely changed my life because I became obsessed with running shoes. And I was so annoying. I mean, I would like run to the store days that like a rep was coming in to show the line. And now I look back and I'm like, that is so embarrassing. Like I was so exhausting.
That's amazing. So you're a nerd like us.
Yeah. I was a cool nerd though.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did you hear that? She qualified that.
Kidding.
I was a cool nerd though.
I would
Unlike you guys.
listen into sell-ins and I'd be like, "Why did you change this? What does that even mean?" And it's like, then you get on this side of it and it's just hilarious to me. But yeah, I was really curious about running shoes. And then you don't know the roles that go behind them. But I really didn't become a runner. I had kind of a breakthrough spring track season my senior year. And I was initially going to play field hockey in college. I was going on recruiting trips. And then I had a high school coach that was like, you could do something with this. So I walked on at JMU, and eventually turned into like a pretty decent
Holy
runner
cow.
there.
You walked onto a D1 track team.
Yeah.
And that's impressive.
Yeah.
But James Madison, that's not an easy school to get into. You have to have some brains.
I have some brains. It's also called Just Missed UVA.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
But no, I have some brains in some areas. In other areas, I say there was room left for other things. Yeah.
I mean, that's everybody, right?
More of an English than math. But yeah, I had a great time at JMU and my college running experience was, it was amazing and also crazy. But I'm very grateful that I still love running. I have a lot of people in my life that you get so burned out or you have a really unfortunate experience. But I stay close to the sport and I think there's some great changes and just culture shifts in the last, obviously 2 decades. But looking back, you're like, God, I wish we did more strength. I wish we did more just, all of this other stuff instead of just run. I mean, you're still a kid when you're 19, 20 and you just these Gumby bodies just running. It's like, you're going to get injured eventually. So that was it was like, you're injured 90% of the time, 10% of the time you have a great race.
They're definitely changing that. Like my son's on cross country and he's in the gym quite a bit. Like they're
for
doing
sure. Yeah.
Taking care of. But that's nuts. So you go in, you walk on the team. That takes some guts. Mm-hmm. How scary was that?
It was scary. I left high school with actually a severe stress fracture in my femur, which was so strange because I barely ran, but it was a really dry year and the fields were really hard. And I somehow managed to get this stress fracture. So I was actually it was actually a good thing because I wouldn't have been able to play, hockey. And so I walked on and I was just sort of this person, and I hung out with the other injured people. We did like water running and biking. And then
There was a whole group.
A whole group. And then you look back and you realize, oh man, this was sort of like Title IX stuff to comp like the football team. They were trying to get good. But it ended up working out for me. I stuck with it. I did a lot of cross training, and I ended up like being pretty half decent toward the end of my sophomore year. And then I ran my very first cross country season my junior year. And I was like pretty good, and then got some money. And then junior, senior year were really my like true full-fledged experience.
That's right.
That's awesome. What were you studying at JMU?
I studied sociology with a minor in criminology. And I was at some like family get together where a cousin was like, oh yeah, sociology, fluff major, but I'm super fascinated with it. I wrote my senior thesis on how the commercialization of the American wedding directly contributes to the divorce rate.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Just how like,
Okay.
But
So wait, you're married now.
Yeah, I'm married now. Yeah.
Did you have a big wedding?
No, we got married in a restaurant.
Okay.
I love it.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I mean, just like so many people, and nobody wants to hear me talk about something over 20 years ago, but it's such a defining experience in your life. Right. And I could see a teammate on Instagram that I haven't talked to in 20 years, but you just have that connection.
Sure.
And just outrageous stories and experiences. Yeah, I mean, some wild stories, but really just
go
just
ahead.
makes the
We're
whole
listening.
experience.
We're listening. Wild stories. These are the things people like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so college was awesome.
And JMU was a Nike school, right?
Yeah, we were a Nike school. I mean, the program, they cut the men's program years after I graduated, which is never a good thing. And then I think things really changed. So yeah, we were Adidas when I first got there, then Nike. But actually, I was given a pair of spikes that I felt like I wasn't fast enough for, and gave them. This is right before I went to college. A Nike rep gave them to me in the running store, and I gave them to Kira D'Amato because I was like, "You're fast enough to wear these," because she and I went to high school together.
Oh,
wow!
crazy.
But
yeah,
did Kira's not 40 yet, right?
Kira she was a freshman in high school when
That's what I was gonna say. So
Yes.
like you knew little Kira D'Amato.
I knew baby Kira. I interviewed Kira for the school newspaper when she was like clearly a great athlete her freshman year. Yeah, I know Kira as Kira Karlstrom with like a 3-year-old baby sister.
Oh, that's
who would
crazy.
be at the meets. Yeah, yeah. And now, I mean, look at her now. So I went to high school with some really impressive runners that I just happened to be friends with. But
I didn't know Kira was in Reston.
Yeah, so Northern Virginia, as you guys know, is crazy. So we were actually in an area closer to 4 high schools. We would drive by them, but because it was so huge, our neighborhood fed into Oakton High School. So I think Kira didn't live in Reston, but lived in Vienna or just one of the surrounding towns. And it was like 2,500 people at this high school. My twin sister and I, our senior year, had classes in like trailers. And we didn't think anything of it. We were like, oh yeah, we're Team E outside. What's happening? We eat lunch at 10 a.m. So yeah,
I'm picturing
we would get up at like ungodly hours for high school.
So
wow.
You and your sister both ran track, or just you?
Just me. Yeah. My twin sister didn't run. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
I was going to say the three of you, if all three there with Kira D'Amato, this must have looked like a John Hughes movie.
No.
Okay, so before we started recording too, I was telling you your resume is super impressive, and you've worked with a bunch of brands that we're all very familiar with. But it looks like you started with Mizuno.
I did. I started with Mizuno 2004 as one of the first Runbird tech reps. Yeah, in the Mid-Atlantic area. So I would drive a car anywhere from Virginia Beach through the Lincoln Tunnel, which my dad, Dave Wood, was never a big fan of. And I would proselytize the Mizuno brand to at the time, like big box retailers.
Wow, they didn't even have the Hitagami then. That was just like you were
No,
doing
it was
the
the
early
Wave Rider.
waves.
Wave
Yeah.
Rider, man. Yeah. Yeah.
So how did you get that job? How does that even come about?
The local sales rep that called on the running store I worked in talked about this tech rep program they were rolling out.
Okay.
And to bore your listeners with 30 seconds more of college running, because of my freshman year it was technically a medical red shirt. And then I actually had another season of red shirt. My coach was like, you could run in grad school and end up with a year and a half of eligibility. And I really wanted to. And then I had justified, because a 21-year-old, 22-year-old does that very well. I had justified to myself that I wanted to actually go to AU, American University, become a better runner under Centrowitz, and then study public health. So I get into grad school, I have this whole plan, and then it was literally the summer before that year was supposed to start. It was summer of 2004. There was some new clause in the NCAA that affected like 3 people. And it was that if you're transferring into that Patriot League, you can't transfer in with athletic eligibility due to Army and Navy being in that league.
Oh,
and
man.
It affected me and like 2 people. So
Oh my
then
gosh.
at the last minute, I call the sales rep, and then I come home from working at the running store, and my mom's like, there's a voicemail from someone at Mizuno USA. And I'm like, oh yeah. So
Can you picture her mom?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
my mom's amazing. So yeah, so then I was like, you get your foot in the door through these running shops often, and this is a long time ago, so it's very different now.
It still
lucky.
seems that that's the move is if you really want to get in with one of these brands, you start there, and then next thing you know, you're driving shoes around in your car.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, the running specialty industry has evolved so much since I worked in it, right? And there's amazing career opportunity within that industry. But then when you are in one of these stores, you can have such a front row seat to the buying, to the merchandising, to the product. I was always really, really just obsessed with product, with running footwear. And yeah, so I called this guy, and the next thing I knew, I was going to Atlanta for an interview, and then I drove home in a Dodge Durango up the 95 corridor.
All right.
So you're 22 years old at this point. You're just driving around by yourself everywhere?
Oh yeah, by myself.
Was that fun?
Yeah. No.
Okay.
No. I once drove to Princeton, New Jersey and couldn't get out of the car. And I went for like a 10-mile run on some canal. And I was like, I got to do something else.
I've been there. I've had that moment where you're just like, a song comes on, you're like, my life, what am I doing? And
exactly.
yeah.
I have an existential crisis like every month or so, every 6 weeks, I'm in some kind of like, what am I doing? But yeah, that was like a real turning point of this wasn't the best thing for me. And I actually made kind of a similar move to do the same thing in Boston for Brooks, because I knew enough to know Brooks' product is created by a team in the US. I knew I wasn't wired for sales. So I moved to Boston, and then very shortly thereafter had an opportunity in Seattle in product. So it actually worked out. I went out on a real whim, but it worked out for me.
That's crazy. I have always thought because we work with some of the tech reps, they come and we do out of Believe in the Run headquarters, we'll do like group runs where they'll have a shoe try on or whatever.
Yeah.
And just they come and they've got their cars packed with shoes.
Yeah.
And they got to set up, and it's physical labor, but it's also like the hours are crazy because you're doing it in the evening and stuff like that. So
for sure. And I was just too type A to also realize, like, relax. You don't need to be on your computer at 8. I really missed out on actually how fun and flexible that job could have been, because you pay for it in other ways. And then at the time, these programs were just getting started. So your territory was so much bigger. Now I think brands are really clued into like what's a reasonable area, what's healthy for someone. I mean, I swear it was that time in the car though. Like I'm not like physically built to be sitting in a car. And I swear that like those 2 years where I was sort of in a car a lot is, I think, where a ton of my just injuries started, just the sitting and the same
I
position.
believe that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to do an hour commute sometimes, and I get out of the car and I just feel like I'm unfolding.
For sure. And not
It's
even
the
fully.
worst.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I did that. And then I went out to Seattle for a couple years and really cut my teeth in product at Brooks Sports. And then thought I'd be out there longer. And then the New Balance opportunity came up where, you know, I knew the name Tom Carlio from being like a kid in the industry. And then there was all this buzz that like he was going to New Balance. They're going to really invest and rebuild running. This was back in 2008. And it was really funny because, and Tom would tell the story, the day I heard that he went to New Balance, I had asked my boss at Brooks, I'm like, Tom Carlio went to New Balance? And then my boss at Brooks at the time was explaining, yeah, he left Saucony for this. He lives in a little town called Newburyport, and it's a better commute, but he's also going to really dig in. And then my phone, my desk phone, because this was 2008, rings at Brooks, and it's from Newburyport, Massachusetts, and it's Tom Carlio. And he's like, yeah, your boss is leaving Brooks. Come work for me at New Balance.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, what? So then I met up with Tom at the New York City Marathon in 2008, kind of interviewed, then went out to Boston and Lawrence, where I would end up working the most, and interviewed with more of the team and took the gig. So moved to Boston, where I was for a long time.
This is a little crazy because at around that time, I was working for an advertising agency, and New Balance hired us to market a shoe. So we went up and visited. It was probably around 2009. Came and visited Lawrence and went through, like I got to see all the shoe designers. And at that time they were working on some minimal shoes and stuff like that.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
So I got to go we could have crossed paths in the hallway.
I was probably there. Do you know, even before, because when did you all start Believe in the Run?
2009.
Can we just celebrate the name Believe in the Run?
We
There's
can.
like endless possibilities with this. It's such a great name. It's awesome.
Claire, your boss at SOREL is leaving. I would like you to come. And
it's such a great name. I was thinking about it. I'm like, man, kudos on that. This can just go many, many ways. So props to you on that. But yeah, your name is really familiar to me outside of Believe in the Run. But yeah, I was in Lawrence every day. Amazing building. Just beautiful. I miss that building.
I grew up in California, and I'm a transplant to the East Coast. And so we're real close to, I could probably go visit your mom and dad because we're right here in Baltimore. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. Right.
I had friends in Reston. But going across to the East Coast, like when I go visit the West Coast now, it feels like a foreign land to me. Enough time's gone by that I'm like, I don't even really recognize it. The one thing though, the air and the smell of the eucalyptus trees really, they hit me right in the heart. And when we were in Tahoe. So as someone who's from the East Coast who went to Seattle, was it kind of like a relief to come back to the Boston area?
Yeah. Because I was in Boston, the first time I was in Boston was 2005. And within 5 months, I knew I was moving to Seattle. So I honestly hung out with like the marathon sports staff after work. I didn't really invest in the city. I knew I was leaving. And then you just kind of start to like slowly, I have a friend that makes fun of me for saying this, but like slowly unlock the city. And I moved to Seattle. And I don't think Seattle was the best fit for me, but I also was at a time in my life where, you know, you're more narrow in your curiosity of the world. And I was running a lot. And then when I moved back to Boston for New Balance, I lived in a bunch of different like towns. You know, everyone says Boston because Boston's so tiny, but I was in Charlestown for the bulk of my time. But then I was in Somerville, Jamaica Plain, which is a neighborhood in Boston. And the traffic actually killed me. I mean, because I was going to Lawrence from everywhere I lived. And for 11 and a half years, that drive just really was not something I found sustainable. As I got into like my late 30s, I was like, I can barely get my dog at doggy daycare. My husband had to get her once in an ambulance because he worked for Boston EMS. And I'm like, oh my God, you're going to get fired. He's like, there's nobody in here. But the traffic's crazy. But that East Coast air, that bite to like fall, the feeling of that city, there's nothing like it.
You just brought up that you have a husband, one, and two, that he's an EMS guy. Now, most people in this industry seem to like, because you're working so heavy with people who are in the desk over or something like that. You find a lot of couples that are like, they both work at the same place, or they met at least in running. How did you meet an emergency medical person? Like, was there an accident or?
There was not an accident. So I've been in an ambulance for shoulder dislocations. No, I met him the good old fashioned way, online dating.
Oh, wow.
You know, I can't say I'm inexperienced in dating in the industry or at work. So, you know, part of my important path that led me to my Boston emergency service partner. But yeah, we met online. And then my sister's like, it doesn't count because you knew who he was.
Wait, how did you know who he was?
I knew who he was because he was in a very, very, very long-term relationship with like one of Boston's famous yoga teachers. So shout out.
Oh, wow.
We're friends. We're all adults.
That's scary to follow a yoga teacher though.
I know, but you know what? I did yoga with him once and I was like, that is a shame. I thought your down dog would be a little bit better. So.
Obviously they didn't spend enough time together.
Yeah, totally. So so I met Chris online, and then, you know, he's a nurse out here now. He became a nurse when we moved to Oregon. He's a neurosurgery nurse.
Like Fokker.
Yeah, totally. Someone just at work yesterday made the joke, can you milk me too? So you really threaded that together.
There we go. Yeah. I've got nipples.
Yeah. So, but yeah, Boston, I mean, the East Coast, even being in New York last weekend, because my whole family was out there, and Portland's special too. You know, we've been out here, we moved here January of 2020. So it was a little bit of a rough landing to move, you know, 2 months before the world shut down. You know, we have a photo of like our shoes and our dog's paws on the Portland airport carpet. Like, yeah, we moved to Portland. And then you have no idea that a global pandemic is headed your way. And so we had a bit of a rough transition out here. And we just, for us, it's mentally healthy to not even compare the two. Like you can't compare Portland, Oregon to Boston, Massachusetts.
Well, Portland, I assume it's like Baltimore. Like we have all sorts of neighborhoods in Baltimore. It's where you're going to hang out is going to really make a difference. I went to Portland right like the day before everything got shut down. Pretty much,
wow.
We went to visit Nike, and one of the guys that was with us got this weird, like he's like, I'm not feeling good. Started coughing and stuff, and and that's where it pretty much entered the United States. And so he was my first experience. I'm like, that dude had COVID.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
But Portland's a weird place, man.
Yeah, man.
Like I stayed at this weird hotel that's like, there was unhoused people all over the place with like families. Like it was crazy.
Yeah. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. And, you know, we don't need to divulge too much, but it is a bummer. And there's beautiful parts, like, you know, and we're city people. So it's a struggle for us because we live for enough up. We live right by the entrance to Leif Erikson. I guess I just pointed at it. You have no idea what I'm pointing at, but, we live like a mile from amazing trails. And that's part of what just ignited my sort of like thirst for more mileage and a little more running, was being out here. But it is something else. And that aside, even I'm still even learning how to read the people. Like I know some people, and I've met some wonderful people out here, but that East Coast energy that's just direct and clear, it evades you big time here. And then I'll think like, oh, this cashier hates me. And then suddenly it's a big line and they're like, wow, I've been wanting to try this yogurt. And you're like, don't you need to like move this along? Like there's a line here. And I'm getting like secondary anxiety for their curiosity in my purchases. They're like, oh, and this one too.
Just hurry up. I don't want to be the person standing in front of you.
We gotta go. It's like you're in Boston and you know you have exact change, but you're not even gonna go for it because you gotta like unzip your wallet. So it's such a juxtaposition in all the ways. And then there's some real kindness out here for sure. But I like cringe because sometimes people will talk about Boston, people being mean or harsh, and I'm like, that's completely untrue.
It's not mean or harsh. It's direct.
Untrue. It's direct.
Like I find that even the difference in like generations. So if I'm talking to someone who's like a Gen Z, like I don't do the niceties and build. I'm just like, this is what I need. This is what I want. This is, this is the information that you need. And this one guy was like, I think Thomas hates me. And I was like, no, you asked me if we had a shirt in that size. I said, there's a medium right there and pointed at it, meaning you go get it and then take it.
Yeah. Yeah. I do this thing out here that really throws people. Like, I don't do the ceremonial, like, hey, how are you? Good. How are you? So I'll see somebody and I'll go, hey, nice to see you. And then they'll be like, and then they'll realize I didn't ask, how are you? And I'm like, yeah, because we don't need to do this at all.
And I don't care.
Truly. And we're not being honest. I'm actually terrible right now and carrying a heavy load, but I'm going to say, good, how are you?
Yeah.
So,
I got in a major fight with my wife this morning. It was terrible. We left the house. Both of us are angry. I'm getting texts all day. Yeah.
Man.
That's fun. So you brought up Laura Green a little bit ago. How do you know Laura Green? Because she's not in the industry, really. I mean, she's in the industry now, but she's not a footwear designer.
No, so I know Laura from Boston because the November Project was started in Boston, and I was one of like the first 20-some people.
So you have a spray.
Who works at Fleet Feet Corporate was the very first person to show up to November Project. She worked for New Balance, but I met Laura through like running Harvard Stadium steps. Okay.
So you have a T-shirt someplace that has a spray paint on the front.
I never did that. I actually never did that. That wasn't for me. But I respect those who loved to do that to their apparel. Yeah.
I thought that was crazy. Are they still going strong?
I actually don't know. I think in some cities for sure. I think it was a great indicator of what was to come of run crews and run culture and this real feeling of community. I mean, this was back in 2011, I think 2010 or 2011. So yeah, I think it ignited such a truth to this is going to be here for a long time. And now you obviously have brands tethering themselves to run crews, activating with run crews, just the insights you can get from run crews. And I think it's a really great evolution of run culture.
Now, you talked about running shoe stores earlier. Now, this is where I think Run Crews came from. I think that November Project did a great job of getting people out and understanding like you don't need a brand or a company to wrap your head around. You can just go out and do this stuff.
Yeah.
But I think COVID really hurt them. And then I remember the guys had to do a video about not hugging people wasn't mandatory.
Yeah.
But so things got weird. But
things got weird.
I feel like Run Crews came from, at least we started Faster Bastards in 2011. And it came out of the fact that I don't like getting sold. I don't like being like feeling like if you go to a running shoe store or something like that, their whole reason to have a running group and a running club is to get you in their store and sell you product. So when we started that group, we're like, hey, look, we can have a group of people we like running with that we'll go do races with, that we'll go be social with, grab beers with, that doesn't necessarily have to have a corporate sponsor or a store sponsor. So I actually feel like the things that are happening now are possibly the wrong things. It's funny. I see people start an independent run club and then a brand gets involved and then the brand makes them work with a running store. And I'm like, now you are the running stores group.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's truth to all of it. I think there's a running store we live right by, and we'll see big groups go by at 6:00 at night. And that's a run group. And I think there's so many positives to engaging with community, and obviously like I'm a big fan of Run Specialty and the role they play in helping educate, inspire, allow someone to keep with it, allow someone to believe like, hey, I can put one foot in front of the other at 10-minute mile pace, and that's fine. So I think there's truth to all of it. And at the end of the day, there's also the reality of like, brands got to grow. Brands got to grow their consumer base. And it's amazing to be outside the run space now. And just as a consumer, kind of feel like, God, the bar has been so raised from everybody that you could kind of sidebar certain brands, be like, yeah, their stuff's not great, or that's never going to work. And now just with, you know, like supercritical foams and carbon and innovation and just great design, brand is so important,
it's
right?
Huge.
Like how is that brand talking to me? How do I feel that emotional connection to that brand? The lack of loyalty always breaks my heart, where, you know, and it's been, even listening to your podcast, like, I think even the fact that people want to listen to like, oh, what does this job mean? You know, it's brutal for these brands when like, you just have to hope you're going to still have somebody. And that like feeling of I'm going to be loyal doesn't exist anymore. And that's the truth. It is what it is. I get that.
And I don't mean to poo-poo on, I hope you're not saying when I say that run groups become running store stuff, because I think there are some, like Mill City has a great community built around it.
Yeah, for sure.
I think there's stores that are doing it really well, where I think so I won't backtrack into that.
No, I get it. I totally get what you're saying. It's like business. You gotta have business. Yeah.
But the thing that you're talking about without loyalty, I think that is good for the industry, because it makes it, you can't, like Brooks has the Ghost, and for the most part, people are just going to go back. There's a certain consumer that's just going to go and buy the next, 16, 15, you know, just keep going. Yeah. But now I think that is where the run culture part comes in with the clubs, is people are exposed to new product from peers. So a peer says, you know, I'm wearing the Brooks Glycerin Max. I really like it. You should check it out. And they're open to checking it out, even if they're a Nike, like, loyalist or whatever.
Yeah.
And I also feel like people can express themselves now. Like probably back in 2009, you couldn't really express yourself in running. You bought whatever tech gear that somebody had, and it was in the colors that brand chose, and you wore the shoe that came out. And that was it.
Well, so I wanted to go back to your time at Brooks really quick, because you mentioned like that's where you got really into the product. And so I'm wondering what was really cool at that time. Like what was happening in 2005 with shoes?
Yeah. You know what? The adrenaline was taking off. Okay. The adrenaline was like just complete. It had a chokehold on like a lot of run communities. And it was still back in the day when like medial density stability was a thing. And
was the Beast around then?
The Beast was around then. And then the Ariel, the women's Beast, was around then. So it was like glycerin, adrenaline. When I was on the product side, the team I was on started the Ghost. The first couple weren't so good. So you can judge my involvement in that. But we named the Ghost. There was a shoe called the Launch.
The Launch.
The Launch, that was Brooks Hanson's used to say launch it when they would like find that gear. So that's where the Launch name came from. Yeah.
That was a great shoe when it came out, and it kind of slowly got worse, but
I was only part of the first launch.
You did a great job.
Yeah. No, but the team there was a designer there, Indra Gunasakara, who did so many amazing products there, and he did that Pure line that was a nice disruptor. Like that's the stuff that you need in running.
The Pure line.
These disruptors. There was that Pure line. New Balance had that Minimus line that people freaked out over. I mean, I remember
the Minimus was huge.
We met a running store owner that got the Minimus logo tattoo on her arm, and we were like, "Oh wow, I really like this."
That's a mistake.
People are crazy, but you need those disruptors that then ignite that next level up of creation. And I'm with you. The sort of dissolving of loyalty raises the bar for everybody. Is you can't count on like, oh, that Kayano, whatever they're on 67th. Just kidding.
Around there.
Their stuff is really nice too. The 95. But even it's just amazing.
What I liked about Brooks back in the day, and the Pure was a kind of a little bit of a later adventure, and I understand that was driven also, you guys brought a design team in from outside that kind of like helped work on that. So I don't know.
I wasn't there. I wasn't there for Pure.
Okay.
I was at New Balance by then.
Okay.
So can't speak to that. Yeah.
But what I liked about Brooks back in those days was that they would play with color when some of the other brands were maybe a little more conservative with their color.
Yeah.
Like I remember there was like a STS or something like that was orange and royal blue that
Absolutely,
I loved.
yeah.
And at that time, I didn't know enough about shoes that I didn't know it was a stability racer. I was like, this thing hurts my feet, but I love the color. I love the way it looks. I'm going to get it.
Yeah. There was a yellow one. There was like a orange black pattern one in the quarter panel. Totally. I mean, so much of it is, I even say this in the industry I'm in now, like there's a psychology to everything, and you can't just scan a consumer. I mean, I believe so much in the technicality, the true, like, you know, data driven insights you can get. Like sports research lab sophistication is so important, and a diversity of runner, of body type, of foot type. I'm very against the gendered split. I think you can slice data how you want.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's so long that people were driven. We used to go to meetings and they'd be like, you know, the gender. And I'm like, you're telling me that every guy's foot is the same shape and every woman's foot, narrower heel and stuff.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
So I'm of the opposite school of thought. There's differences in human beings. There's differences 100%. That play into
regional
the mechanics
too.
At the lower leg. They're completely regional, depending on where you go in the world. There's aspects that play in that are more off limits to talk about, that need to be talked about in a healthy, equal way, right? And I think there's differences in mechanics toward the end of a long run than there is if you're a neighborhood jogger a couple of days a week. You know, like the average runner really isn't running enough to get terribly injured. And that's fine. If the average runner is running a couple, 3-mile runs in the morning to be a better version of themselves, they'll probably be okay in a lot of stuff. And then
Did you ever get injured when you were doing that?
No, I did not.
Yeah, but you pop like I've gone down a wormhole on you. You're just sneaky fast.
She is sneaky fast, but
like, gosh, if I could be that for a week, not saying you don't work your tail off, I would
try living with it.
Experience that. Totally. Because I've gone down a wormhole on you too, and I'm like, oh, they don't run together.
No. Okay, here's the thing. When we started, we were working at a company together, and I'm like looking at her stuff, and she's like running pretty fast, but she's just doing like 3 miles a day. And I'm like, have you ever tried racing? She's like, nah.
Now here we are.
You're like a late bloomer runner.
Yeah, I hated running growing up. Yeah.
My dream come true. When did you first start? Can I interview you guys next time? When did you first start like getting into running?
After college, like I was
the best.
Well, and kind of like in college, because I played sports, all through high school. I was like super active, and then I all of a sudden was doing nothing. So I just like started jogging.
Totally.
I believe it's pronounced jogging.
Yeah.
It's jogging. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, if I could send out a dispatch to like 20-year-olds, it's like, do your bands, lift your weights, like understand what a core actually is. It's not your abs, and start running in your 20s and like just love the hell out of it. Believe in the run, wink, wink.
Yeah.
There we go.
All right, Claire, you're hired.
Claire, you spent 10 years at New Balance. Is that right?
11. Yeah. 11. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So obviously you did a ton while you were there, but to talk to us about some of the highlights, what did you work on? Man. What were some of the fun projects?
Yeah. I was at New Balance at such a special time, and so lucky to be there during sort of the heave-ho of running. That sounded so dumb, but like the roll up your sleeves.
We get it. Yeah.
Were you a dwarf at the time?
The fourth one, yes.
Okay.
But oh God, it's like how do you even slice that chapter up? I was front row to the collaboration and the crucial integration of product to brand to voice to a sports marketing strategy, and those people became my family. And you spend 11 years, and it encompassed product lines, failures, successes, athletes that become friends, like just good friends, kind of pinching yourself. You're at the Olympics, you're at, uh, Hayward Field, and I love track so much. I think track is just, I love the initiatives happening right now in the industry to bring track this rightful energy and visibility and hype it's so deserving of. What these meets are doing, Grand Slam and all that. And I just think the experience I had, it just crossed into like becoming a professional, growing my career, really, learning firsthand. I had a front row seat to so many aspects of the business that someone in my position now at New Balance, it's so big and they're so evolved and so successful. But we were just like a family speaking the same language, turning this thing on. And it is probably one of the most cherished experiences I'll ever have in my life. And it's like an exercise of being okay with not being able to replicate that. I think my therapist would be proud I just said that. No, I'm just kidding. But it's like just, it was magic, and it was hard work and a lot of learnings and growth. And I've been gone not quite 5 years. And so, and you see your own blind spots and your own opportunity to grow and do something different. But yeah, it was a really wild time of product, of launching platforms, franchises, just completely like lasts, material standards, lifting up design to create beautiful objects of desire, as I say. It all matters. Like, I think there's this feeling that like, oh, performance product is all performance. Like, the performance also includes the feeling and the confidence and impression that runner has putting it on. Subconsciously, yes. What are they feeling as they touch it? If that wrinkle isn't even affecting them, they're going to think it is. And so the psychology and the nuances that all have to come together are remarkable when it does. And, consumers, it's just amazing to me that like still running product in general takes longer to create than like having a baby. You're just like, how is that longer? Yeah. And I think it's amazing. These brands have to truly anticipate insights and know what to do before the current one will really be. So just kudos to them for still, crushing it. And yeah.
Two things that you said there kind of hit home for me. One was there's sometimes when I get a new shoe and it's such a beautiful shoe, and I sit on my stairs right before my front door and I'm lacing it up, and the anticipation of running in it, and it just looks fast. It looks good. Totally. Maybe I have a workout that day and I'm like, this is the shoe that's going to help me have a good run. I haven't even run in it yet. And that gets, it's like the pre-digestion that gets you ready to go and go for the run. And the other thing that you brought up that we've kind of we're new to in the last few years is we really, people sometimes they see us doing stuff with brands and they're like, oh, this is what they're doing it for. This is why they like doing that, or, getting the shoes or getting the gear. But it's really become like getting to know the people in the brands and getting to know the people behind the product. It really is, when you say family, like when we go up and we do a project with New Balance, and it is people that now we've worked with several times. We go to these major events with, we go have cocktails with after the event. There's all this stuff, and you get to know them as people. And there's such great people in the industry. Like, if you think runners are great normally, the people in these companies are fantastic. Like,
full stop. Yeah.
Yeah.
They care so much. And I can say this, living outside of the running industry, there is not, you'll read reviews and someone will comment like, they're trying to do this or trying to do that. And it's like, no, they're truly trying to make your run better everywhere. And they don't always hit it, right? And it's really hard. There's a lot that has to come together. There's mistakes made. I've been a part of making bad decisions, right? But there's such care to take care of runners. And there's not a hidden agenda of getting someone injured to make more money or, it's just, I think it's amazing how dynamic and curious consumers have become and educated, where offset is like an understood term. I believe big time in offset. I mean, I can honestly personally tell when I'm in like a 6 mil versus a 12 mil. And it's not one fits all at all. I mean, we used to be in the lab with Emma or Jenny, and they're not feeling maybe what that sports research lab is saying, and they're not feeling it. That really matters. That also psychologically, they're not interpreting that betterment the way that we're maybe measuring. And so it's this quest from all brands to just make it better for everybody. And it's a really special industry. And I think for all your listeners, no brand has a bad agenda for you.
No, just some make better shoes.
For sure. For sure.
The crazy thing is the craziest one lately has been, so ASICS has the Super Blast.
Yeah.
And it's been a very popular shoe, and it's $200. So we're talking someone has to really like running to decide that that's the shoe they want.
The $200 shoe. Yeah.
Yeah. And they came out and they weren't sure how people were going to respond to the first one. So they ordered X amount and it sold out, and people were like, oh, they're withholding it so that, the demand will grow. And then when they came out, the second one, I know for a fact they ordered like 4 times as much, and that one sold out. And people were like, oh, they're doing this so that,
they're shorting the market. And
they're like, no, believe me, if we could make as many as we could to sell, we're going to make as many as we could sell.
I love that shoe. I had the first Super Blast, and I get it. I love that shoe. That was a beautiful shoe. Yeah. Yeah.
So you ran your New York though in New Balance.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
So you're still loyal to New Balance.
Yes, I'm still loyal to New Balance, but I also like to stay close to things and have a curiosity of what's happening at a few other brands. But I'm trying to tell your listeners, like, believe in these brands. But I go into running stores, I pick up a shoe, I'm like, what are they doing there? Like, oh God, that Vamp is so shallow. The fundamentals,
See, that's beautiful.
Making this call.
See, I think that's the interesting thing is I usually feel like when I go and talk to people at the industry, like I'm a nuisance because I can talk for an hour about the drop or why that foam is something that I like. Or like you said, the Vamp is too shallow and it hurts my toes when I run. And it's not because the shoe is too short. It's because, that.
Yeah.
And I'll sit there and talk. And at one point I'm like, am I just boring the shit out of these people?
It depends who you're talking to.
Yeah.
I think you'll probably be meeting your match where I come from. But I think at places based on what's out there, you're probably, it's going over their head maybe. Like, what does he mean? Yeah. But I also think like geometries are everything. There was a couple old school names in the industry 20 years ago even that people would talk about. And it is like the geometric integrity, the geometric nuances in combination with the engineering of the foams and the, hardnesses and all that is completely everything. Like, it's so nice to see this density game seems to be mostly over. Because you're just asking for inconsistencies too, and post-applied processes. But I think that's also just changed the industry is there is a formula for the general runner that really is going to work and feel good and keep them pretty healthy for the most part.
But that's the thing you bring up that's confusing even to me, and I've been doing this for a while now. Nike just came out with the Nike Pegasus Pro, or
Premium
Plus, which is it's Plus, right? Or,
there's 2.
Yeah, the Premium's coming later. It's the Nike Plus, which is really the turbo update.
Yeah.
So when I look at the measurements of the forefoot stack and the heel stack, it sounds right. It sounds like that's a nice cushion shoe, but the way that the ZoomX foam feels under the forefoot there, it feels thinner than it should. And I'm like, I don't know what to do because I've got another shoe that's similar stack and it feels like plenty under the forefoot. And this one, just something's weird about it that it doesn't work.
And that could be the spec of the foam and the compression rate, or I mean, there's to firmness of foam, there's different aspects that play into that, like gravity, durometer, and sometimes the dialing of it is truly everything. I'm curious, so I'll have to get one on my foot. But
do it if you can try one on. Try running with it on cement because there's something about that just feels like it flattens out in the forefoot, and you can almost feel the ground coming through. And then just try a shoe that has a similar stack, and it's like, oh, this feels terrific. So I don't know what
the
it is.
forefoot. I was the development director at New Balance used to call me like Princess in the Pea, because I'd be like, Bill, this is like 2 mil less than we said. But the forefoot to me is such a precious area, because everybody's going to use the forefoot. Nobody doesn't use the forefoot. And when there's like skimping, or it's a little too thin, or even like the sidewall height that makes it look too thin, and someone goes, it's too thin, but really what's under the foot is even different. It's so important. I mean, the whole 360 degrees is so important, but yeah, never skimp on the forefoot, she said.
Hey, that's what she said. As someone who appreciates foot massages, I'm sure that, anyway, we'll transition there. You're at SOREL now.
Yeah, I'm at SOREL out here in Portland, Oregon.
Is there as much stuff to dial in SOREL, or is it pretty much straightforward, like comfort boot?
Yeah, no, great question. So I would say neither. We're in a really exciting chapter of SOREL, and just like running, stuff takes a while to create, right? So for those listeners, I listen to Smart List, and I always think of Tracy in Wisconsin. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but to Tracy in Wisconsin, look out, in about 9 months from now. But there's definitely dialing, working with, SOREL has this precious combination, leather, rubber, felt, and there's for sure levels of craftsmanship in those materials that I would say are a different level than I've ever worked with, right? The nuances of how those materials come together in a vulcanization process. When you kind of fire it up, what does that do to the upper? I truly believe the principles of performance running can be applied to any aspect of footwear, because I don't think there's anything as hypercritical and nuanced as running. I have a friend in the industry who left running for a lifestyle brand, and we've had these conversations. Like, just you can't find another level of like hyper sophistication. But we talk about offset, we talk about hardness, geometries. We really do make utility functional product. And then in the future, you're going to see a real swing, evolving our men's line and continuing to drive this women's line into a brand that allows the consumer to share to the world, like, they're passionate about this. We're going to be using different compounds in the future. But it's a really special place of such heritage and like lore of, these Arctic explorers, that is what baptizes everything we do. This idea of, life-saving. How do you translate that to a woman that commutes in New York City on foot and wants a elevated product? How do you translate that to appropriate ball width and leather article and really engagement with the whole product around her foot? So it's been a fun, different chapter for me. And, allows me to kind of sharpen a different area and grow in ways that I think I wouldn't have, in my past life. But yeah, SOREL, polar bear logo, Portland, Oregon.
I go way back with SOREL. So it was actually, this is how long ago I started snowboarding, when Burton first started making snowboards.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And back then they didn't have snowboard boots. You put SORELs on, and
I love that you know this.
Yeah. Well, I was
love
there.
That you know this. Yeah, that's amazing. Oh my God, I'm going to have to talk to you offline, because this is the special. Yeah, there's some real amazing history and authenticity. That SOREL boots would be duct taped to boards, and the famous caribou. Yeah. Wow.
I even had my pair that I loved, and I bought them in Vail, Colorado, and they were beautiful. They had the darker brown top with the lugs and the real tread on the bottom, and then like a brown leather, and then the cream felt. But the leather, I love these so much that I probably had them for 10 years, and I would put there's like mink oil or something that I would put on the leather to keep it waterproof while I was snowboarding. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They were just worn in. They were perfect. They lasted forever. Mm-hmm. And then I had a dog, and the dog also liked the boots so much that he decided to eat the leather. and destroyed
man.
them. But those I had since I probably got those when I was like 16, and probably they died when I was around 30.
Yeah, but could have lived longer.
They could have. It's rubber. I could have gotten a new insert.
Totally.
You know.
And those principles really infiltrate everything we make. I'll have to send you all some stuff. Get your sizes and address to send you some fun stuff coming.
All right, cool. Because it really was. Other shoes say they're waterproof. And you can
Yeah, they're not.
But these, the rubber, nothing's getting through it, and they were great. But yeah, I still have the Burton board too. So it's
that's so rad.
Yeah, it's from 1990 something, or it might even be pre-90. It might actually it is pre-90. It's like 88. It's 86 or 88.
Wow.
I forget.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. But SORELs were everywhere. That was it. That was the shoe.
Yeah, and people have SORELs without knowing they're SOREL, right? So we have some really exciting, brand awareness ahead of us, and category expansion coming for all genders, and there's a lot of new people the last year. There's been some big change, some nice big positive change. So we're I cite the era I was at New Balance, but we're in a kind of similar roll up your sleeves, like dig in, get on the same page, and we gotta push this boulder up. So
I do think there's a desire for authenticity in product.
Yeah, product
that SOREL can hit on. The only competitor they had back then, when I was getting those first ones, was LL Bean duck boots.
Yeah,
and those, you looked a little soft compared to the SOREL.
I have a quote on a board in my office that says, I got it off of Reddit. I'll probably use it in a sales meeting presentation, but it was like, in Maine, every winter, I took my unbreakable LL Bean boots out of the garage, and every winter my feet were wet and cold. Yeah,
exactly.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, that's rad. So obviously you have a fan following within the industry. Like I said, Paul Lang was the one that we interviewed. And
Laura Green made a point to tell me that you are very, very funny. So,
man,
which that means a lot coming from her.
Funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have friends that are like, "Are you still funny in Portland?" I don't know. I actually don't know.
You are for sure.
Thanks, guys.
And I know we're over an hour here, so we won't keep you any longer.
Go.
Yeah, Thomas can talk forever about shoes and nerd out a lot.
It's
You can
nice
nerd.
to talk to you all.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming
nice
on.
to talk
It
to
was
you. Yeah.
it was very fun. Congrats again, and I'm excited to
Thank
see what
you.
marathon number 2 is going to be.
Thank you.
So you
I
haven't
think
picked out yet?
Eugene works with my work schedule. I was
And that's
looking
close
last
to you too.
night. It's close. Yeah. So, and just, maybe something lower key. Just the experience was amazing, but for time,
it's a lot.
And not inviting my toddler would be the next rule.
Yeah, sure.
So,
Wait, you brought a toddler to New York?
Yeah, we brought a toddler and a dog to New York. Yeah.
Wow.
How'd you get a dog there?
Our dog can fly at my feet in a carrier.
Oh, I was gonna say your dog can fly.
No, our dog can fly. She flies the plane, but she was co-pilot at the time. No, we're not those people. Like, our dog is our family, but we're not those people that like won't leave our dog. But something happened when we moved from Boston to Portland between COVID and us being home. She had a few surgeries, so like some trauma. We've worked with behaviorists. I have spent thousands on like behavioral specialists. She's the sweetest dog ever. If we're there, she's your best friend. If we're not, she won't let you near her. So we can't leave her. She's rigged it so that we can't leave her unless you're
Smart.
Keith Kelly, but he was in New York. So Keith Kelly is one of our best friends. He's out here now. He and his wife, Evie. So
I didn't know they were out there.
Yeah, they're like
I know
a 10-minute
Evie's
drive from us.
Doing
Evie's
Hoka
a
apparel.
Yeah. Evie's Hoka apparel.
She was one of the people I talked to we were at a bar post marathon, and I talked to Evie about apparel for like 45 minutes. I'm like, I gotta be boring you.
Evie's incredible. She's been in apparel design and apparel direction her whole career. She's amazing. I had like a work crush on Evie, and then I've known Keith forever. They get together. I actually credit myself for their marriage because my husband and I lived in I was like, can you just finally move in with Evie and we can live in your condo, please? Because we had to move in Boston with short notice for some reasons. So he's like, okay, I'll move in with Ev. And then they were like engaged a couple months later. But
Oh,
yeah, so
wow.
they live out here. Our dog loves them, but they were in New York. So she had to come with us. So my twin
Okay.
sister in Brooklyn hosted my husband, my toddler, and my dog. And I'd say it was A plus minus. Here's one quick story. Maybe this won't land. But my twin sister was in Paris. My twin sister was in Paris like 2 years ago, shortly after the Notre Dame fire. And apologies in advance to any practicing Catholics listening in. But she was gifted a piece of the Notre Dame. This man she met, like they get to talking. He's like, oh, one moment. He runs into his like flat, and he's like, I took pieces as it was burning, which I don't know. I'm not going to worry about what that means.
Yeah.
So she has it in her apartment in this like little glass case, and we're at JFK, and she's frantically calling me that it's missing. And I have a not quite 2.5-year-old who's unhinged. And she was like, would she have eaten it? Would she have eaten it? And we're like, it's kind of like it's kind of like activated charcoal. I think she'd be fine. I find this thing in a diaper bag, the piece of the Notre Dame. So then we're like scrambling in JFK, like sweating. I've just run a marathon. We're trying to get the dog to pee. My daughter's like having some giant tantrum. People are staring at us, and I'm holding this piece that I don't want to like start
Like not in glass?
evaporating. No, she took it out of the glass, which it's like, I told Emily, you've got to just like childproof as well as you can in your shoebox.
Yeah, but
that you
who
pay.
thought the kid would go after artifact?
A piece of the Notre Dame. So then we put it in a clean poop bag from my dog's poop bag, rolled it up in the backpack, and I'm thinking, this is probably the only journey a piece of the Notre Dame will go on like this. JFK to PDX in a poop bag.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, that was like the only almost failure, but we made it out.
Everyone's fine.
It's fine.
It's
Everyone's
almost
fine.
like you're in
Lovely.
that. What was that movie with Tom Hanks? It was also a very popular book where he goes around the world looking for artifacts to lead him towards.
I don't
Oh,
something.
yeah. The Da Vinci Code.
Da Vinci Code. You're part of the Da Vinci Code.
Yeah.
100%.
And
yeah.
nobody believe it. It's just going through the airport in a poop bag.
Yeah, exactly. And then my husband's like,
Tom Hanks is
"What are you
chasing
gonna
you
do?
through
Some
the
kind of resin." Yeah. And I mean, yeah, so that was, and then she calls again frantic, like, you left your medal here. I'm like, oh my God, I don't care. I thought it was something else, like worse than the Notre Dame. So yeah, the whole fam came. It was really special. But back to reality Tuesday morning.
Yeah. Wow.
All right. That's some good stuff.
Thank you guys so much. So nice to talk to you.